Hi everyone, my name is Phil Husball. I'm the Director of the Centre for International Training and Education and Director of the Sanctuary Seekers Unit at the University of Leicester. Welcome to this first event of University of Leicester Refugee Week, Breaking Barriers. The fourth time that we've run this, and the second time that we're doing it online. Today's event is about a project that we're involved in called Bright Path Futures, and Joyce, who's the lead person on that, will be speaking, and one or two other people will be speaking about it, and then there'll be a chance to ask questions about the project at the end. Okay, so I'm just very briefly going to talk a little bit about ourselves as a University of Sanctuary and what that means and why we are a University of Sanctuary, and hopefully that will connect to why we're involved in the Bright Path Futures project. Okay, we can move on. So the first thing to say is, as this slide shows, there is a desperate need for more accessibility for refugees and asylum seekers. You can see that the numbers are exceptionally low of refugees who are able to access higher education, and we would like to be part of that movement to enable more to be involved, and we share the same aspirations as the UNHCR in that respect. Okay, we can move on. So, you know, it's quite clear that there are numerous barriers that stop sanctuary seekers from accessing education, you know, whether they be finance, whether they be their own background, which may involve mental health issues, etc. Just the whole kind of process can be really kind of complicated. So here at Leicester, what we try to do is try and break down as many of those barriers as possible. We offer scholarships, for example. We offer free language classes. We've even been able to offer some people accommodation, and we certainly offer lots of information, advice and guidance to try and point people in the right direction so that they can aspire to get back into or to start higher education. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick slide giving a bit of a kind of history of our involvement. So since 2015, as you can see, we've been offering informal English provision, and that's kind of built up over the years. You can see that since 2017, we've actually had over 130 students who have done our free pre-sessional or have done our pre-sessional classes, and we've not charged for those. Many of those students have gone on to study degree programs, sometimes at Leicester and sometimes at other universities. I mean, personally, for me, it's always fantastic when I hear about students who I've originally met, whose English level was very low, and they've gone on to kind of study at university, thanks to, in part to our support, but in a large part also to their hard work in it. As I say, we've got scholarships, both for campus-based and DL. I think we were the first university to offer scholarships for DL students, which enables us to get students who are not based in Leicester to study with us in politics, history and international relations. And we're always looking to kind of add new possibilities. So at the kind of behest of the Vice Chancellor this year, we've added 4 additional scholarships for Afghans who came over recently because of the events in Afghanistan. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so we really embrace this concept of learn, embed and share, as is shown in this slide. Hopefully, not only in this event, but in other events, which I'll share with you in a moment, you're going to see the variety of activities that we do here at Leicester. And you can see the variety of partners that we work with across the city, across the country, and beyond the country, beyond the UK as well. So we really try to reach out to work with as many partners as possible. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we have a vision, because who doesn't have a vision? And this is our vision. We would like to become an international centre of excellence. I think in many ways we are an internationally recognised centre of excellence, but we want to continue to involve and offer more opportunities and work with more like-minded people. And this project that we're working on now, that you're going to hear about, Bright Path Futures, is one such project. And I think hopefully what you've heard me talk briefly about what we do will help you to understand exactly why we're involved in this project. Okay, next slide. Just before I just do hand you over to Jose, these are the events that we've got this week. Hopefully you can join us for some more of them. Again, they show some of the things that I've talked about. There's Thursday when we'll be talking about our distance learning scholarships. We do a lot of work with doctors and nurses to support them as well. Often it's an aspiration for refugees to work in the medical healthcare, and it's not an easy thing to get into. And so we're lucky that we've got some colleagues who are going to come along and talk about how you can aspire to kind of work in medicine. Okay, so just before I do hand over, because I want to give as much time as possible to Jose to tell you about the Bright Path Futures project, I just wanted to say that for me, what makes this such a kind of powerful project, and one that I think we are so pleased to be involved in, is that it's designed to not just support one group of refugees here. It's not a sticking plaster that will, once it's finished, that will be that. I think what we are developing under Jose's leadership, if you like, is something that can help others in the future, many groups. We've seen increasing number of refugees from around the world, and I think recent events happening very close to us indicate that we might be seeing more. And projects such as Bright Path Futures, we hope Futures will help those people to, it will empower those people on arrival. It will help them to adapt to their new lives here, and it will offer them support. And sometimes that can be missing. I think, you see the headline figure and comments from our politicians about welcoming people over here, but often when you dig down, you find out that the support is sadly lacking. So that's all I'd like to say. As I say, we're really pleased to be involved in this project. And I'm going to hand over to Jose, who I think is going to start telling you something about the project. Okay.
So it's so lovely to be here and welcome everybody. It's wonderful that you're interested in what we're doing, and we're going to do our very best to share with you some of our story and our journey. We started off in a hotel in Leicester, and a few of us were involved in quite ad hoc way really in supporting families who'd newly arrived. And I think the really important thing about our project, and perhaps the thing which gives it a bit of a difference to some of the other work that happens, is that it was commissioned by people in the hotel. So, we were responding to a request for, quite a specific request for support. And my colleague Munir, who's here on the call, and we're going to be hearing from her in a bit, was the first person really to approach me and say, look, we need to do something to help women. They're stuck in their rooms. They're not used to coming out. They're not used to connecting with other people, making friends, having a bit of a voice. They've never been to school. They don't know how to read and write. They don't speak any English. What can we do? And that what can we do question is what guides everything, all the work we do, because we're very curious. We really are very interested in a sort of, well, what happens if we try this kind of approach to life, rather than, oh, we have to be absolutely confident this will work before we try it. And that spirit of experimentation and collaboration, and being led by the people who are the experts by experience, the people who are living the life, who are having to sort of deal with the challenges and the opportunities, is really the heart of our project. Afghans working with Afghans to help make great change and bring people into their more of a cultural integration. So that's great. Okay, so we've got a bit of a timeline here. Alex, I see your name on there. Do you want to do a bit of storytelling for us?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, basically this just kind of shows how we got involved in the first place. So basically at the beginning of September, I went along to the hotel where our Afghan community who have just been resettled in Leicester were housed. And that's where I met Munir and some of his friends, and I kind of asked, you know, is there any pressing needs at the moment? So the people in the hotel were already being kind of given clothes and things like that, and he said the thing that we need most right now is English classes, particularly for the women who many of whom hadn't had education and who really needed to learn English. And so yeah, so actually we had then through our City of Sanctuary provision, we had already received a message from Jose basically saying, you know, I'd like to volunteer to teach, you know, to teach any Afghan refugee students who you may have right now. And so we got in touch with her, and the rest is history, really. We then had a meeting with Munir and Tahmina, who is Munir's wife, who was also involved in this project. And yeah, and basically Jose then started teaching a couple of days later, started teaching a class of the women. And yeah, and then basically the whole of the project kind of grew from those roots. So I think at this point, Jose, I think you could take over the storytelling.
So one thing that I've noticed from the beginning of this project right the way through to now is a kind of a twin pull in dynamics. So on the one hand, it's been really important for us to be very relaxed, very informal. You may or may not have picked up, I do a bit of clowning. I'm a bit of a sort of a drama person. When I'm in the class, I'll often use body language and facial expression to kind of help people remember things, but also just to lighten the mood and get people laughing. I think that's really, really important, that kind of human to human, being in the space together and enjoying ourselves. But at the same time, what we're doing is deeply serious, and serious for every individual that we come into contact with, because everybody's future is precious. You know, everyone has this extraordinary potential. And if they can see that and be helped to kind of believe in it, it will become unlocked in a way which just won't happen if nobody helps them to sort of look in that mirror and go, oh, maybe I can be that person. And similarly, that's on a personal level. We've got that kind of twin approach, but on a systemic level or an organizational level, I think the same thing is true, that we're working very spontaneously sometimes to develop partnerships, to develop networks, to kind of go, oh, you do this, you know, we're doing that. We don't want to start from scratch or reinvent the wheel. If we put these two things together, this great new thing could happen. And that kind of thinking really lights people up, because it's just very, very practical. And we spend a bit of time exploring our common points, and where we feel there's enough of a fit, it's quite easy really for us to just agree that we're going to work alongside each other. And that's what's allowed us to scale up our work. We started in Leicester. We've been piloting some approaches, which we'll share a bit more about shortly. But our aim now is to help share their approaches much more widely across the UK as a whole, working with the Home Office and with the British Red Cross. But the sort of, it's easy, it flows, it's got a warmth to it, is there systemically, organizationally, and for people personally. But the more serious bit is that for me is the capacity building challenge, because it's very clear, and the reason I volunteered in the first place, it was very clear that there was going to be a huge influx of people coming into the country with a lot of need, and the chances of us having the trained skilled professionals ready to go to pick that need up and run with it was very, very slim. So I thought, well, I'll pitch in for a month or two and sort of do my bit. I've done this work before. But actually, once I was in the system, I started to get very curious about how you meet that challenge of capacity build in a really creative way. And the solution that we're exploring in our project is to redefine the nature of expertise. This is in no way undervaluing the deep knowledge that people get when they've got long-term professional skills, experience and training. You know, there's many areas of work where that's essential, is a must-have, and we can't do without it. But where we don't have enough of those people, we have to start to think, well, how else can we build expertise, can we build capacity, and can we create opportunities that people need to learn and to grow and to develop? And that's the challenge that Munir, myself and colleagues are really tackling head on. So one example of this is our approach to language and literacy. I've been teaching ESOL in its many forms for quite a few years. I've specialised in working with people when they first enter, particularly people who've never learned to read and write in their own language, which presents a very unique challenge for a teacher because you don't have a language resource to build the literacy on, and you don't have a literacy resource to build the language on. So finding the very small intersection between those two things to build learning on takes a bit of doing. However, despite the fact that I've been doing this for years and years and years, I notice that people who come in and support me and help me in the work, who maybe have never done it before or have done very little of it, have a great deal of success. And I put this down to the fact that we're all experts really in language because we speak the language. If somebody's in a volunteering position, the chances are their English is good enough to do that. We're all who can read and write, experts in literacy, because we know how to do it. And it's a little bit like that thing of there's not enough driving instructors to go around. So, you know, you go out with your mum and dad, and as long as you're careful and you do your theory practice first and you sort of put a few things in place, you can still learn to drive. Bit hair raising at the beginning maybe, but, you know, as you go, you're off. And what we're trying to do is to develop a concept of a language or literacy coach rather than a teacher. And we're trying to create resources that make it very, very easy for people to pick up and run with and sit down with another person and say, let's work through this, let's help, and learn language which is going to be useful for building relationship. And we know that this is true because the language we're teaching is language that I've noticed people need. I don't go into the classroom with a curriculum, with books, with handouts, nothing. I just go in with me, a whiteboard and a pen, and I watch. And when someone's trying to say something, I go, that's what you want to say. And that's the bit that we work on. So over the last 4 months, we've built up a bank of language. So building capacity and allowing people to use their expertise to come into a space and help others, and particularly Afghan people helping Afghan people, is a really core part of what we do. So another aspect that's really sits underneath everything is our philosophy or our framework, or our approach to being in the room together. And I'm going to ask Alex to speak a little bit to this, if I can, and then I'll come back in and sort of build on what she has to say. So Alex, I'll pass over to you for a bit. And I think it's next slide, if that's okay.
Yeah, so hopefully the text isn't too small on this slide for you to read. But yeah, basically, so the framework that we're kind of basing this project on, it's based on Riff and Singer's psychological well-being model, 1996. And so basically, this is a kind of comprehensive, multi-dimensional model for describing psychological well-being. And it's been really influential in studies of refugee psychological experiences and war-related trauma and post-traumatic growth. And so basically, this model divides psychological well-being into 6 dimensions, as you can see here. So positive relations with others, environmental mastery, autonomy, personal growth, purpose in life, and self-acceptance. So those are the 6 elements of this model. So now I'm going to hand you back over to Jose again to explain how these dimensions relate to the key tenets of the Bright Paths Future project.
This is where we have to see if we can squish quite a lot into quite a short bit of time, because of course this is stuff we could talk about at length. We were really happy to discover that there was such a beautifully clean and easy fit between these 6 areas of this model and what we were doing in the room. And I think a lot of this speaks for itself. I'm not going to go and read out all the boxes because you can see how that fits together. But things like environmental mastery, you know, being able to actually get to grips with the world around you, or self-acceptance, being able to accept that things are really tough sometimes and that's okay. Autonomy, particularly for women, we've had a lot of work that we've been doing around gender equality. These are all really important building blocks for growth and for development collectively, culturally and personally. The bit that we're adding is the sort of the land underneath, with that lovely path winding through it. And we working with a model called role development. And the idea here is that we're not fixed entities. We're not just one holistic self. There's lots of aspects to us that show up in different situations with different people. And when we recognize that there are lots of aspects to us that show up, or versions, we can start to create a relationship with those and make more active choice about which bits we want to recruit and dial up, which bits we want to dial down that aren't so helpful, and how we can get them working together as an inner team, if you like, much as we work with other people, to make ourselves really effective. So to make that practical, working in the room with women who haven't been to school before, I'm very aware of the parts of them that might need to grow, of having a voice, the part of them that's really happy to laugh and be social and make friends, the part that's really got a powerful aspiration to get a job for the first time. And that sense of who could you be and which bits of us do we need to grow is really important to our project, as well as being solutions focused, where instead of looking at the problems and the challenges, we tend to look at resource. What's going well? What can you already do? How can we extend that? How can we build on it? How can we use it in different situations? So those two things are very important. I'd like to show you now, as another way of showcasing what we're doing, a video that we've made, which it's an appeal for money. I won't apologize for that, because we're about to start a big fundraising campaign to try and get money to pay Afghan refugees to go into hotels around the country and work and lead workshops for other people from Afghanistan, for families. But it's also the best we've got, I think, in terms of a video that explains things. So let's hear that now. Thank you.
Taliban took over many provinces very quickly, but nobody was expecting them to take over Kabul this soon. Kabul soon turned into a ghost town. I couldn't see my future there anymore, so I had to flee along with my family.
Our project is about helping people from Afghanistan get used to their new life here in the UK. We're very proud to be working closely with the University of Leicester and with the British Red Cross. The workshops we're running are to be done in hotels right across the UK, all led by people from Afghanistan and delivered in their own language. The issues that we're helping people think about are things like, where do you get information and help from? How do you look after your own well-being when you're under huge stress, living in cramped conditions in a hotel with a very uncertain future? And also, how do you manage some really big cultural differences and adjustments like gender equality, which is very different here in the UK to how people live back in Afghanistan? One of the important things about our project is that it's being developed and is being led by Afghan nationals, people who've lived that journey and made that transition themselves and had to deal with some of those cultural adjustments, so they get it. People like my colleagues Monir and Shahrazad, who I want to introduce you to now.
I served over 12 years alongside the British force and NATO together. We made a lot of sacrifice to help your brother and sister in battlefield. We fight shoulder to shoulder against the global terrorism.
The families who are here since August, they're finding it very hard to reintegrate to the society, especially women who are not literate enough, who don't have the basic skills and understanding of how the Western world works and the language differences and the cultural shocks.
A lot of men and women and children, their lives saved, came to the UK, and I appreciate the UK people for that. Most of those Afghan refugees are now stuck in the hotel and they're struggling with their mental health.
We're creating and sharing practical resources to help people get used to their new lives here in the UK. These resources are things like the Amaco cards, which is an evidence-based wellbeing tool that people can use, and we've put that in their own language, physical cards and online, and we're sharing those across hotels all over the country with the help of the Home Office. We're also making literacy and language learning resources that are going to help women who've never held a pen before, never been able to write their name in any language and never been in a classroom, to suddenly get that access to the wider world that literacy and language brings. They're so excited now they can speak and read and write, and they have that independence. We can see the difference it's made to them, and that's why we're so keen to help other women all across the country and back in Afghanistan get some of the same skills.
Back in Afghanistan, I couldn't go to school, so it's a new experience for me to take a pen in my hand and write something. All of us are so excited and happy that we joined the class. The first day I said to myself, I can do this, but then I came to the class, I saw what it was like. Now I study day and night. It's my dream to learn English and get a job.
If you would like to help welcome and support Afghan families arriving here in the UK, please make a donation. Your contribution will help us to employ and deploy a team of Afghan facilitators and teachers to work around the country to help the people who will benefit so much from a bit of support.
Your support will help a lot of Afghans to maintain their mental health and prepare themselves to fully contribute to the wider community. Thank you all, and God bless you all.
So we're very fortunate in we've put partnership working. Actually, I think we need to be a bit more specific. We're not formal partners with the British Red Cross, but we do have a really strong collaborative working relationship. And the University of Leicester, of course, is the project owner and sponsor, who's sort of had the vision really and the wherewithal to bring the project in. So the key difference for us has been starting to work with the Home Office, who are rolling out a programme called Welcome workshops through local authorities across the country. And when we realised with the British Red Cross that we were working so closely on the same thing, we've joined forces, and the Home Office are now helping us to push out our resources and our workshops and make contact with cultural communities across the country. And one of those resources is the Amaco cards, which we mentioned in the video there. I'd like to ask my colleague Monir to talk a bit about those cards. If we can go there. Well, I think we might have skipped over there. We are great. And tell you a bit about the difference they've made to him and the work he's been doing on them with other people.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me in this important meetings. I'm so happy that I'm part of this meeting. Before I start, I don't know, we have some time I can share some of my experience or not, some of my story I can share with them. So Joe's, we good with time or not?
Please go ahead. It'd be great to hear from you.
Yes, when I got here first times, I was struggling a lot. Everyone's were very panicked and everyone's were disappointed. And one side, we lost everything back in our country. So our life was completely collapsed. And we lost our everything over there in Afghanistan. And our family was behind in Afghanistan. Everywhere, everybody was very shocked. And every time we saw the kids and me and my wife and the women's, they were struggling bad and they're stuck in their room. They don't do anything else. That put us in very difficult situations. Me and my wife tried our best to help them out somehow, but because of the culture barriers, we couldn't do a lot for them because one, they were new in the country. On their side, they were very shocked with everything. We tried our best to do something, but fortunately we met Alex and Joe's, and they're both so brilliant and they helped us a lot. And I talked and give them a brief about the situation of the refugees in the hotels. And we start from zero and we build a good relationship with everyone. And then we create the trust environment between the families and the refugees and with everybody, and then everybody start trusting us and they listen to us, and then we brought a lot of changes. And I'm I really appreciate the Leicester University for their support, and that the Bright Path Futures brought a lot of changes in their life. When we got first in here, a lot of women, they're not allowed to go there from their rooms because of the culture barriers, and their husbands not let them to go outside. And they don't, because they were stuck in their rooms, because our culture is completely different, and they're not enough open minds. After a lot of talking, a lot of workshops, and then explaining everything, and then now there's completely changed. I'm going to share one of the stories of the women with you guys. The change Bright Path Future project they brought to the women's. I went with one of the women to the bank, and they tried to open a bank account, and the customer service, they asked them, like, can you write your names, and you have a signatures? And said, yes, I have. Yeah, I know how to write my name and stuff. The person, they never hold a pen in their entire life, and they never been in the class. And I see a massive changes, and she write her names and did a signature. I said, oh, that's the big changes that I can see, and I thank everyone for that. Jules, for the amazing job she does, and especially for the men as well. It's like every time they received a call from the GPs, and they wasn't able to spell their names and tell their date of birth, and every time they run out for someone to speak English, now they can say their name, they can write their name, and they can tell their date of birth. And that's very massive changes. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of information about the Amaco card. One first time I saw the Amaco card, that was like something like I was playing card, like I didn't take it as seriously. And then after a couple of days, I think, okay, let's play with my colleagues and other refugees in the hotels, maybe. And they were like it. And then I put it in the tables. There's a very short synthesis icon with it, because one, the women's in our culture, they're not going out a lot. They're always staying in the room. They're not doing an exercise. They're not doing any other activities. They're always staying in the rooms. They're depressed and stressful. And then when I play the Amaco card, and my wife play with them in the with the women's, and then I told everyone, so you guys can pick one card which make you feel better, and that will be useful for us. And then I saw people start picking up their favorite cards, and then they're gonna say, okay, I like this card because of this and this. I said, like, for some guys, we have two guys, they have a like disability, and he said, I like this card to go for a walk, and because I'm so stressful, I'm gonna try to use this and go out with my wife outside all the times. And the other guys pick another card. They said, okay, I need to put my achievable goal for the futures. And then everyone's find out about the Amaco card, very useful. And then everybody start using it. And now I can see a massive changes in here. And when I went to piloting an experiment, one of our projects in one of other hotels in Doncaster, I went there, and the same things when I got first in here, they were in the same situation. They don't have enough information. They were struggling with the well-being, mental health. And while I was explaining about this project, about the Amaco card, and they were very happy, and we're looking forward to you guys come and deliver these workshops, because most of our guys, they don't have information. One things I noticed, most of the other projects or other workshops been delivered to those bridging hotels, they are just briefly explain the presentation, and just they walk through to each presentations. But the good things is about Bright Path Future projects, we try our best to more discussions, give more space to the peoples to trust us and build that relationship, because most of Afghans, they are shy and they're ashamed. Everything they have, they keep it in their inside. And what's our aim is to try to build that relationship, and they have the confidence, and everything they have, they can put it on, ask it, and then we will give them an answer. Because most of those Afghan refugees right now, I don't know how they heard some negative rumor information. They said, okay, we heard if our wife is doing, we heard our wife is and not coming for 1 week and home, what we should do. I told them it's not like this. Think positive, and this country is a freedom country. This is not like Afghanistan. Everything you want in this country, you can. And it's very safe for our women and for our children, for everyone's is very safe. And once again, I really appreciate the Leicester University for their help and support. I'm very proud that I'm working alongside with the Leicester University. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Monir. That was really helpful. So we're going to draw our sharing to a close shortly. I'd like to just come back to what's new or what's different about what we're doing. There's lots of amazing intervention going on all the way across the country, and quite a lot of what we're doing, I suspect other people are doing too. So intrinsically new, intrinsically different, I'm not so sure. But I think that the values we're bringing to the project are what's driving our activities. And our values are nothing about me without me, the expert by experience, led by the people who have the need. We spent this morning recruiting a team of facilitators. I wasn't on the interview panel. That was done by Monir and Shahrazad in first language. We've got a massive pool of talent that's suddenly arrived in the UK, people with sort of depth of experience and expertise that's been brutally interrupted their careers, sitting in hotels with nothing to do. And so we're trying to create a talent funnel. We're trying to get people and recruit them and get them working again, get them networked, get them using those skills. But it's the people in their own language, for their own people, but alongside native speakers and people residents of the UK who can support and work in partnership. So that's important about what we do. Noticing the need is important, having really simple things that we do together. So it's not complicated. Our literacy resources are literally 2 double sides of A4, that's it. Our language resource will be videos that are very short, that anyone can watch and go through again and again. Our Amaco cards, as you've seen, are just really simple and easy to understand. Less is more, and less is harder to do sometimes. It's actually very hard to get very simple things. And we also notice that there's a wealth of information going out to people in the form of PowerPoints from the Home Office, from the Red Cross. It's quite hard to digest that if you don't have literacy. So we're working with the British Red Cross to make audio podcasts chatty, friendly, to get some of that information out in a different way. So sort of simple and accessible. If we could move on, I'd like to just talk about where we'd like to be and what we might do next, and bring us full circle really, back to what Phil started with at the beginning. Because one of the things that struck my heart very early on was when I was talking to my colleague Kat Gibson from the diocese and talking about the work we wanted to do, and she was very involved in helping Afghan families, but she said, you know, there's a lot of support relatively going to families from Afghanistan compared to people from other communities, asylum seekers, and the need is in some ways greater. Now I know this, I've done this work for a long time, but the feeling of what can we do just got a little bit bigger at that point. And what we're now doing is we're teaming up with Roots, with Kat and V's organisation, to take the resources we're creating and make them accessible for people from other communities. So the Amaco cards can be translated. We can do a Ukrainian version of Amaco cards if we need to, and we can get them turned around in a week or 2. It's easy. You know, we can do the language learning videos, and we can just get a Ukrainian interpreter in and make them. We've got that agility. And I think what our vision is, and this is a vision very much gifted to us by Piotr from the Red Cross, who did the initial work with the families in the hotel, is to see that there's a real gap when you come to this country. There isn't a kind of a process that you start and go through to help you with cultural sticking points, to help you find your feet. And in a small way, not in a big grandiose, we can get everything covered way, but in a small way, we would like to be one of the bricks in that building that foundation, to create that resource for people, so that whenever anyone comes here, there's a welcome. There are people who speak their language, there are some resources they can use, and we've got information signposting. And I think systemically, it's very important that we're working with the Home Office and with the British Red Cross and with people at a national level, because that's how you get something consistent. And although we're only at the beginning of that journey, we have a very strong aspiration, as Phil said, to support Leicester, University of Leicester's aspiration to become globally and nationally recognised, not because it's great to be all sort of like, look at us, we're wonderful, but because we want to help. And because if you have a bit of a way in to do something at scale, you can be more useful. And that's really our motivation, is to be useful to people. So I think that's probably it from me. Really welcome any questions that anyone has at this point.
So we've kind of compiled a few questions as we've gone along, but I can see that somebody's got their hand up actually, so maybe we'll take that question first. So Zainat, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi. So I'm a student, of course, at the University of Leicester. I wanted to know about the volunteering opportunities. When, how does this work? Like, when would it start, and things like that? Because you did touch it, but not a lot.
That's a great question, Zainat. Thank you for that question, because the volunteers are the lifeblood of everything, really. That's how I've started here, and volunteering can open so many doors. So we are wanting to team people up with some of the women. The more help you get with your spelling and your reading and your pronunciation, the better. Running 2 or 3 sessions a week, and we're in the process of getting people to come in and support those sessions. Another thing which is different about what we do is that we include the children. Most of the women in the hotel, not all, but most, have children under 3. You can't get nursery funding for children under 3. It means you can't go to college, you can't do courses. So we've worked with the library in Leicester, who are just amazing. And there's a big shout out and thank you to the people of the library, all of them, to create this wonderful space in the kids section where we do a pop-up classroom. We get the tables out, we get the whiteboard out, and off we go every morning. We get the toys out and we play, and we have little kids kind of bimbling around and climbing on things and coming and grabbing my whiteboard marker and drawing on the board, and it's all quite fun. So volunteers to come and help with playing with kids, doing a bit of kind of language development with them, and helping the women is really, really a great idea. And there are loads of other volunteering opportunities too. So the University of Sanctuary, there's lots of other people that you could help who have a similar need. And once we know who everyone is, we'll be really interested in signposting you to the right opportunity with the right group of people. And we will try and speed things up a bit, Zainat, because I can hear that you're keen and ready to go. So thank you for that question.
Thanks very much, Joes, and thanks for your question, Zainat. Okay, so we've had a few questions about the availability of resources. So we've had a question about whether these slides will be shared after the session, and also whether we can share the link to podcasts, whether people can access Amaco cards, whether they can buy a physical pack, and whether they can access the video that we shared earlier.
Right, so yes, you can. So it's I will put in the chat, I'll just find the link and put in the chat to the Amaco cards website. So in terms of getting hold of this resource, Katie, who made the cards, who's on our team as a volunteer, wonderful, has her own website for Amaco cards, and each card has a lot of information behind it. She spent years actually researching this stuff. Again, deceptively simple. Each thing is evidence-based. But we on our Bright Path Futures website are also putting together a page specifically for Afghan people with the Afghan cards and some Afghan speaking. So depending on who you're working with, that's where you can find them. I'll put in the chat the link to the Amaco cards website, and you can buy the cards from the Amaco cards website, and she'll send you out a pack. So that's doable. Other resource, the literacy and language resources, we're still making. The language videos will be done in English, but we're going to slice in or edit in the interpreting. So if you have a high need for a particular language group and you have somebody who could do the recording in their language and do that interpreting, then talk to Kat or myself, and that's something we can look at. I think that's in the pipeline. In terms of the literacy resources, the model is there. So if we could go back to, I'm not sure if I can share screen. I think I probably can. I'm slightly wary of running out of time to do this. So Alex, could you take another question and I'll get this ready to go and share it before the end? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. So we have, so the question about the slides. So I believe that we can share these slides later on. certainly the recording of this session we're hoping to put onto YouTube in the next couple of weeks. So we have another question here. What would you expect from university student volunteers? So I'm not sure whether whether you'd like to answer this one.
So, well, I think as Joseph said, there's a variety of opportunities around expectations that would depend on which volunteering opportunity people did. But in terms of expectations, we would like people to be kind and considerate, and we would like people who volunteer to commit. Because there's nothing worse than having volunteers who can turn up one week but can't turn up the next week. So people need to understand that it is a commitment, and that those people who will be benefiting from the volunteering will have an expectation and will be looking forward to meeting the volunteers. So I think anyone who goes into volunteering does need to understand it, make sure that they know what they are committing to. If the volunteering opportunity involves any costs, such as DBS checks or anything like that, then we will fund that as well. So it's really just a question of finding something that you are comfortable volunteering in, and making sure that you're there on time regularly. That's it, really. So what we're doing at the moment is just asking people to kind of complete a very short form, just telling us who they are and why they want to volunteer, etc. We will contact everybody. I mean, just on this project alone, I've had about 40 students contacting about this. It's absolutely fantastic, but we don't need 40 people to help with this project, but we will be looking at other opportunities. And then on Friday, I think it is, there is a session around volunteering where you can hear some current volunteers talking about their experiences. So it might be useful to come along to that.
Okay, thanks, Phil. So we've had a couple more questions come in about volunteering. So one question is, have we developed a training program for our Afghan volunteers?
Yes, so I'll answer that question if that's okay. We're in the process of developing. We've been doing some training for the Home Office for facilitators from local authorities, and that's going to form the backbone of the training process for anyone volunteering. But there's some additional skills building that we're putting in around the language and literacy coaching. I want to put a plug in for volunteering here, because I talked about talent, and I talked about talent funnels and sort of growing, developing. Really, the project is about everybody growing together. Me, Monir, the women in the group, the people we're recruiting in, everybody. And volunteering really is an exceptionally good way of doing this. Most of the interesting jobs I've had have come from volunteering when I got started, and some opportunities come from that. So we're very, very happy to find who you are as an individual and try and help you grow and you develop if you're working alongside us, and make sure you've got the skills going forward that you're interested in learning about. I think that we you give, and then hopefully you can receive in your turn. Have a good stuff to talk about at interview, get a reference, all of these things help, don't they, with people at the beginning of their careers.
Fab, thanks, Joyce. So we've had a question about whether people are able to volunteer if they're based outside the UK. So is there anything that people can do remotely?
So this is kind of the way we work, is we look at a resource or a possibility and then just get a bit creative. So I'm sitting here right now thinking, we've got a lot of people who've got energy and time and want to get involved. What's the easiest, simplest and most effective way to harness some of that energy and give them an opportunity to do it? And straight away, I can think of all sorts of things one could do. We've got a lot of people stuck around the country in hotels and in rooms needing help with their language. And I think if anybody has an idea or a suggestion of how they think they could help meet a need, let us know, because your idea might be the really good winning one that we kind of go, that makes sense. That would be a great thing to try. And then what we do is we do a little small pilot. We give something a go once, and if it looks like it's got some legs, we might try it a bit more, and who knows. So don't be shy, you know, to get creative with your own thinking as well. And we will be trying to look at ways to match all of this great goodwill with the need that there is there.
Brilliant, thanks,
Once
Jo.
we've landed some of our existing challenges, I have to say we've still got quite a bit on right now, but we'll get there.
Okay, so we have a question about other parts of the country. So are we looking for contact with other bridging hotels in other parts of the country?
That is an excellent question, and the answer is in very big capital neon letters. Yes, we are. Munir's your man. I'm going to put in the chat here his email address. Munir, I hope you're going to forgive me here, but if you have contacts at other hotels and you think that they would benefit from our workshops, please email Munir, because he's leading on the workshop delivery for us. And yes, with the Red Cross, we'll be kind of very interested to talk to people about what we can do, particularly when we have people in that area that are available to deliver the workshops. And we've got a fairly good geographical spread as of today. But I'm going to come back to the crowdfunding. We won't be able to do any of that work without some money. So a really big favor that you can all do for us is to take the link to our crowdfunding, and again, I'll copy it in here momentarily, and to send that out to people that you think might be interested in supporting, because you may only have, like, I don't know, a $5 or something, but every little bit adds together. And if we can pool our resource and our effort here, we'll be able to do a lot more in those hotels going forward. So I'm unapologetic about making a push for that. Let's put that link in here. Is there another question, Alex?
There is one more question. Yeah, we have a question about how to encourage English practice at home or in hotel rooms, especially for families with school-age children.
It's about really engaging people's vision and sense of what's possible for them. If I believe that I can be this other version of me, then I'm hungry for it, then I'm going to do the work. You know, our women started like this, looking at the floor, what am I doing in this room? What's the point? But really, once they had that sense of hope and possibility, because I said, you can, look at the speed you're learning, you know, of course you can, then suddenly there's a real hunger. And I think it's about that purposefulness. It's about creating that sense of trajectory and direction and destination without putting a pressure on somebody that they have to perform in the here and now. When you have a lot of trauma or stress, then things like concentration and memory can be really difficult. And when you've never learned formally before, that can be really hard too. So we use an analogy of you're planting a seed. There's a whole load of time goes by where you don't see what's happening to that seed. The roots are under the ground. And then finally you'll get that little green shoot, and suddenly there's a vigorous plant and flowers and leaves if you put the water and the sun in the right place. And explaining to people, you know, like, be patient, keep going. And then once the plant grows, you're off. You can really, you know, you can be a sunflower. And when people see that they can grow that sunflower for themselves, then they will want to work. And purposeful, clear, and the steps are really visible. You know, I did that on day 3 with my group. I said, okay, you're going to do this first, then you'll go to college. You might do a little bit of that, you might get a certificate. Then from there, you can go in and you can do some vocational qualification at a college with more ESOL. Then from there, you might be able to get a job. You might work for 2 years in a job, say in a care home. Then you might be able to do a management qualification or a sort of, you know, get that on top of it. And that might take you like 7 or 8 years to get to that point where you're actually in that kind of position of responsibility. But that's the pathway. And, you know, that sort of sense of there is a career path that I could take with transferable skills that I already have is very, very important in terms of making sense of why should I put the effort in now. I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant. I love that image. Thanks, Jose. We've had a question about whether we can share the Amaco cards link in the chat.
Oh, yes, that was what I was about to do. Let's get on it. Get it in there. So the Afghan specific Amaco cards is on Bright Path Futures, and I think that link's already gone out, but I'm going to just give you this link here. If you Google Amaco cards, to be honest with you, you'll find it. That's what I've just done right now, but I'm going to stick it in here as well for everybody. There we go. And you can send a message to Katie if you have any questions. I'm sure she'll be happy to hear from you from that site. I was going to show you the resource. Have I got time? It's 3 o'clock, isn't it? We're kind of out of time. you want a very quick peek?
Pascal, I'll leave this one.
While we're deciding, I'm going in. Look, I'm going to do this. So the reason I wanted to share this is because people are asking about adapting stuff. We talked about adapting the Amaco cards by getting translations. This is a really simple concept. Find somebody with enough of a kind of a sense for sound and music and how things sound with their own language, and work out, if you can, words which have that beginning sound. So asp, boot, kitab, doctor, feel, gul. And that's really an easy way for people to start to learn letter sounds and phonics in their own language, because I can look at that picture and go, that's a gul, and gul is g. Anybody could do that in any language. So it's the sort of the concept or the approach is as important really as the resource itself. This just took me a couple of hours to put together. And you move on to there from your consonant, vowel, consonant words, and